participants are welcome to a national level multidisciplinary online FDP Challenges before Indian higher education system in COVID-19 pandemic, which is organized by IQAC, GFGC and the PG Center, Bapuji Nagar, SHIVAMOGGA. Now today we talk about how the challenges we accepted and we derived it, which is the most significant in notational identification and identifying the solutions before our education system. As many of we aware that pandemic has significantly disrupted the higher education sector as well, which is a critical determinant of country's economic future. Many of us, we know that sometime in the second week of March, we got a shock that the state government across the country began shutting down the schools and colleges temporarily as a measure to contain the spread of a novel coronavirus. It's close to a month together and there is no certainty when they will reopen. We are all uncertain about it, but this is a crucial time for the education sector. A broad examination and a board containing the board examination, nursery schools to higher education have very important aesthetic promulgations of various universities and competitive examinations. Among others held during this period are the many private sector institutions and the government sector institutions. Government as itself and the school and universities closure will not only have a short-term impact on the continuity of learning, and more than 285 million young learners in India, which belongs to arts, science, commerce colleges, engineering colleges, medical institutions and many other institutions also engaged for reaching economic and societal consequences, which is a major deriving force in our nation. As many of us, we are aware that the structure of schooling and learning, including the teaching and assessment, was the first to be affected by the closures. As we know that how to handle, only a handful of private institutions are engaged in the online schools. How about the institutions which are less infrastructure, which are having a very meager infrastructure, which are having no infrastructure? Institutions had to derive their inner force to strengthen the learning for other students. As the student, in addition to the missed opportunities of learning, no longer have a healthy meals during this time and subject to economic and social stress. This is a very important concern, as many of us, we are aware that when your stomach is full, that we can learn many aspects of learning outcomes. Okay, the pandemic has a disturbed, as I said, it is a higher education sector is critically determinant of country's economic future. As many of us we are aware that almost 39,000 institutions and 793 institutions have ranked according to NIRF ranking framework. So this means that a large number of Indian students which are enrolling for the higher education system are sending back from all other parts of the country, and we are Indians, we have to face the major crunch of it. And as many of us, we are aware that Indian education system has a very complex system of education system, which impacts and imbibe the many aspects of a learning, and the teacher role or the institution role or the government role plays an important role to face these challenges in a COVID-19 situation. As we talk about, there are the many domains of a learning aspects. Especially when it comes to a computer science, we certainly understand what is the skill level and how the skill level will impact our career, and many career oriented skills are required in a learning a computer science system. As a conventional learning programming languages, transforming conventional learning programs to a higher level of aesthetic learning, which we call as a scientifically proven, like artificial intelligence or maybe the data mining or the data sciences, are proven a job oriented, which is a more concern. Not only this, if you take a multimedia environment, or if you take entertainment industry, or if you take more concerned about the security system and the concerned about a banking segments, where the large amount of a banking recruits a degree students. Now it is a challenge for us. It is a challenge for us to derive how best effectively that we can provide an opportunity for the learners in this situation, in this critical situation. As we know that, the pandemic has transformed. Many of us, we know that this disease may affect our learning potentiality or the teaching potentiality. The Center for Monitoring Indian Economic estimate that as for this pandemic, it results from 8.4 to a 30% of unemployment, which is a real concern about. Needless to say that pandemic has transformed the centuries-old chalk talk mechanism teaching model to one driven by the technology. The disruption in the delivery of education is pushing the policymakers figure out how to derive the engagement at a larger scale, ensuring e-learning solutions has created a platform where tackling the important issues of learning as well as the teaching methodology. The many of teachers we are engaged online classes by consulting with various software platforms, as many of us be aware that how the Zoom classes been taking places, and the Diksha platforms are there, or the LMS which is monitored by the UGC, SWAYAM courses, MOOC online courses. There's a many things have come into a picture. So the still we are concerned how best suitable solutions that we can provide to our learners, which is a very important and the challenge in this critical situation. As I am concerned, there are two inclusive learning solutions. One is the most vulnerable and marginal need to be developed first. As we know that how many of our students get a bandwidth. Only the urban students can access to a data and the database along with internet facilitations for all these solutions of a classroom online learning. Whatever the students, those who are not marginalized into a rural, how they get benefit and what kind of a solution that we are looking to integrate the technology to reach them and provide a bigger solutions, so that even students, those who are in rural areas, get benefit out of it. Now the challenge is, one of the most challenges providing an internet facilitation. Along with that, the device where we can access the internet solutions. There are the many papers which we learn by understanding the conceptual level, pedagogical level, and driven by the skill implementation level. As many of us programming languages are concerned in derivations with a skill. As we say that skill set, having a skill set is a greater implementation of a learning aspects of a computer science domain. Even if we learn the basic of how the C programming can be coded in a shorter while, how the header files can be included, how the pointers can be used to access the operating system. So these are the minor things. But in a broader way, the student has to implement and import a certain ideas which are there in online aspects of learning to a real implementation on their own. Now this is a challenge. Now earlier days we used to hold their hands and show that where exactly the errors are coming into a picture and how to rectify the errors in a practically. But now the student has to learn to rectify the errors on their own and implement the new emerging trends of automation rectifications, or how logically errors can be removed, how the important errors can be eliminated, so that a good programming code can be get benefit for them to earn more skilled job opportunities in India. As many of we are aware that preparing a higher education sector needs a global attention. As we know that we build many aspects of a complex system, from the basic simple programming to a complex implementation of a project. Many of us we are aware that implementation project needs one important aspect is how best that you can understand the problem. In this situation, we derive the bigger problem or the opportunities into identifying the solution domain. Now we cannot go to a clients. Clients will come to us and the clients will give you an idea what exactly their expectation. Now we derive into a smaller pieces so that the pieces can find a solution, and later we can integrate them into a bigger projects. As many of we know that in India, not only in educational sector, there are mainly educational teaching technological institutions are helping out. As we know that these companies will derive learning the many things online. Many institutions are there, many government consent policies are there, and many institutional participations we engaged into providing an online platform. As we know that conventional teaching to migrating a conventional teaching to higher education learning is a great challenge for our students. Now it is an important, and Indian traditional knowledge is well known across the globe for scientific innovation and values which benefit to develop the sustainable technologies. As many of us we are aware that. So we have to give them a greater platform by integrating the technologies with the conventional interactions and conventional value system. So this is a major challenge for the students, those who are engaged in online. In this time of a crisis, a well-rounded and effective educational practice is what is needed for the capacity building of young minds. When we talk about it, and recently I am going through a survey of Education World magazine, they said that only few institutional, which are autonomous and the non-autonomous institutions, having a stake for providing a good education system to our students. Now, what about in other institutions which are non-autonomous, which are infrastructure, less infrastructure? They also bring into a standard ranking system according to NIRF, National Institute of Ranking Framework. They say that in India, the biggest challenge is bringing all the institutions together and handshake them to provide good opportunity for learning them. This is what that we have to learn. As one of the important tasks is, there are the three important stakeholders. One is the students, in what level and what extent that they can pick up the skill of learning online. In what extent the students can pick up to integrate these technologies is another challenge. Not only this particular stakeholder, I am talking about a student. This is one way of an assessment. Another way is how the teachers will facilitate learning potentiality to the students on the basis of a skill set, on the basis of pedagogical aspects, on the basis of even non-infrastructural students. That is the second stakeholder's responsibility is. This means that teachers are having a more important discussion or attribute, this we can say, that they have to they have to take an opportunity as teaching online. Not only the teaching online, integrating LMS, that is a learning management system, so that the students can cope up all the content online. So LMS is another major breakthrough. As a UGC is recommending that the most of the institutions should inclusively integrate their potential outcomes of each course into a learning methodology, which is a very important. As I said, in future by 2021 and the 22, almost 30 to 40% of the institutions will engage online learning, which is of course what we can say, this pandemic has created an infrastructure facilitation, and pandemic has created an opportunity for converting crisis into an opportunity. As I said, 30 to 40% of institutions are engaged in online. What about other institutions? Other institutions should also learn how to cope up these crises and provide them the smaller infrastructure institution. Recently, there is a news in that where Kerala government has providing a TV media where the online classes are integrated into TV media and provide them into a skill based to a students, a small integrated environment to a bigger environment. Okay. Now, one of the aspect here in the mainstream is, as we talk about a student and the teachers, one of the biggest challenge is government policies. How the government policies look into these crises into a solution is a major bit. That's what many times the institutional policy makers like UGC or the AICT or national policy of NPTEL or many other SWAYAM courses has created an adventurous policies, or we can say the opportunistic policies to in all the learners. I'm talking about the students is another aspect. Another biggest challenge is as a parents, how they accept these things in a mainstream is a very, very important concern. Parents have to encourage their children to learn many skill based or conventional method by learning an online mechanism of a system. As I said, many of us, we know the crisis all a rounded and effective educational practice is what is needed for a capacity building for these young children. And this is our responsibility. We have to take a stake in that and we have to participate continuously. That is a more important and what we call the culmination of our important aspects. We continue with the key aspects of coping with the 19. Ensure that services are being delivered to whatever the extent is possible. We talk about delivering mechanism. As many of us we aware that lockdown has accelerated adoption of digital technology, business houses, educational institution analytics, computer data management, and many more aspects of it. We have been talking about virtual classrooms and various online tools. As we know that Google Classroom is there, many other classrooms are there on the Zoom classes that we are engaged of it. LMS is another part of it, SWAYAM, MOOC. These things, along with that, IIT Bombay provides a continuous learning facilitation to institutions where the infrastructure is less. This is a very concern. And we have to take an advantage of this, where the learners can participate by accessing these kind of things. Okay. Now I come back to a complete domain of a computer science stream. So learning computer science needs a complete participation of the learners. As I said, even the teacher engaged to derive or engaged to drive you in open classroom or online classes, but the student has to get accelerate themselves, and the student has to get cope up with the situation of this crisis, and they have to make the systematic identification and the determinants of what outcomes that they are going to engage them, what are the objective of the courses, and how these objectives are engaged in a longer time, so that their minds can be convert them into conventional learning into the skill based. As I said, many important thing in a pedagogy is to address how best the students can learn. And as a teacher, we have to learn what extent the student has understood. This is what we call as an assessment mechanism. And in a LMS, we clearly indicates that assessment provides a clarity whether the students can accelerate in our speed or the student needs a more attention towards it. So provide them a continuous 24/7 and 365 days to provide a continuous interactions. There are many interactive tools are there. There are many communication channels are there, like an email, chat group, providing social standard groups, providing educational academic groups, or continuous groups will enable the students to understand what extent they can find a solution through these media of communication. This is very important. As I said, many communication media will help the students to engage in a learning through a potential way of systematic and skill-based learning. One of the important aspects in a learning is how best the technical enhancement. See, the technical enhancement, many open source tools are there. As I said, learning computer needs a device. The device will not only help, the device will help you to go through an open source. As we know that there are more than 30 to 40 students are completely engaged in an open platform designing mechanism in a software industry. There may be a PHP SQL mechanism is there, or there may be an open source operating systems are there, or there may be a simple Perl scripting are there, or there may be a simple free open source software where they can engage. One of the biggest challenge in coming is how best that you can build a software through an Android mode, which is a very important and which is a student centric project. We can say that many students can design and many students can concentrate the completely what we can call as a collaboration working culture by engaging themselves in a participation learning. There are the many platforms in India provides a continuous interaction with the students to access and design. This is going to be the benchmark next level. As we know that creating a software, academic software, is not a challenge. Creating a software for the society, creating the software for the clients, creating software for the driven houses, the business driven houses are more concerned. And many educational institutions are always engaged how best the students can acquire their skill in accessing. As we know that if you take a simple, as recently I was going through the internet, they say that this pandemic database help us to identify the artificial mode of algorithms to distinguish how to find a pattern of their movement of a genes or the pattern of the virus infrastructure. So through this artificial intelligence we can create different set of solutions, which is a very important. In meanwhile, there's a different machine learning concept will come into a picture. So from the conventional learning program coding to higher level of a coding. So beginners always has to initiate a 3 level of a learning, which is a very important in this pandemic situation. As if you are the first beginner, you have to start with a basic, which is a very important to understand the basic infrastructure of a tools, basic infrastructure facilitation of a tools accessibility, or how best that you can code in that basic level and basic level working environment. So the bigger canvas is how do you migrate from basic to an advanced or advanced to a professional. So migration is always needed in a computer science from the basic level to an advanced level, or you can call as an expert level, from the expert level to a professional level. This migration will challenge you to gain the one of the best skill in an industry. And whenever you go and attend the interview, the best thing they assess is how technically that you grown up on your own with the voluntary of various tools engaged in it. So one of the backbone of this adaptability is the participation. What kind of a participation? The best participation is in involvement. So community involvement are building the community to scalability. See, many open source platform will give you the project. You create the project and share them. Share the code. This open source code will enhance in others to integrate with their add-on facilitations and on basis of integrating with another features. So this is how the open source platform will build. There's many communities will help you to engage in the learning. As many of us we know that genome open source operating systems are there. Even Microsoft is completely given some of the tools of the student centric learning, and Oracle will give you the database as a student enterprises editions, as a basic student professional editions, as a student community editions. These kind of tools will help you to engage the learning in continuous. That is what I just want to say, that how professionally you are, how professionally you engaged in many aspects of a learning. As in fact, I was going through the many various articles of our learning mechanism and the teaching mechanism. So NPTEL, as we know that National Project and Technology Enhanced Learning, and especially National Mission on Education integrating with an ICT infrastructure. Many institutions are integrating continuous environment where the students will get benefit. Not only in art stream, computer science stream, science students, they should engage online learning. I wish all the participants, those who are participating this national level multidisciplinary online FTP, I wish them the good luck and encourage the students to take up these challenges in future. I wish all